Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the listening and viewing audience to the 33rd meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration. This meeting is being broadcast live. This is the committee's second hearing with stakeholders pursuant to its inquiry into the prevalence of teenage pregnancy and the state's capacity to minimize the occurrence of teenage pregnancy and to provide services to teenage parents. Members of the public are invited to submit their comments on the Parliament's social media platform. We have before us today 4 entities: the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the National Parent Teachers Association, the Family Planning Association, and the Mary Care Home for Teenage Mothers. Thank you all for taking time to be with us today. We appreciate your time and no doubt what you will contribute. The 3 main objectives of the inquiry are to examine the trends in teenage pregnancy and the associated health effects, to assess the services and facilities available to counteract, alleviate, or minimize teenage pregnancy, and also to assess the adequacy of policies and laws to treat with teenage pregnancy. I will now invite members of the committee to introduce themselves. I'm the chairman, Paul Richards.
Good morning. My name is Khadija Amin. I'm a member of the Committee on Opposition Senator.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Christine Nuala Hussain, member.
Good morning. I'm General Antwine, member.
And there are other members who are not able to be with us today. I'll just identify them. The Vice Chair is Esmond Ford. Also, we have member Glenda Jennings-Smith, and also member Alison West and Ruhan Sinanan, who are all unable to be with us this morning. At this time, I'd like to invite the head officials of the 4 entities before us to introduce themselves, and also their counterparts can do the same. Starting with the TTPS.
Good morning. My name is Collis Hazel. I'm an acting superintendent of police in charge of community policing in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Good morning. I am Vina Butler, acting superintendent of police.
Good morning. I am Aisha Corby, manager of Victim and Witness Support Unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Gideon Dixon, Acting Inspector of Police Child Protection.
Good morning. I am Gemma Taylor Alexander, Victim Witness Support Unit, Eastern Division of the TTPS.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman and other members of the committee and the counterparts on the side. I am Rafina Ali Budusai, National President of the NPTA.
Good morning. I am Donna Da Costa Martinez, the Executive Director of the Family Planning Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning. My name is Eva Rampasad, and I am the Projects Coordinator with the Family Planning Association.
Good morning. I am Deborah DeRosier. I work with Mary Care. I am the coordinator of that particular center.
Good morning. I am Dr. Cynthia Lauchutang. I'm on the management team of the Mary Care Home.
That's it, everyone. Thank you all. Once again, just to reiterate, this is the second public hearing. We've had several entities before us before, including the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, and other stakeholder agencies. And we're trying to really get some information and data in some instances, and assessment based on your professional qualifications and experiences to deal with this very, in some instances, disturbing issue of teenage pregnancy and its prevalence in Trinidad and Tobago. Just to give you a bit of a context, this is information we would have disseminated before, coming from a Ministry of Health document between 2014 and 2018. I know the members of the media who are with us today, thank you for joining us. We've had a total of 3,577 teenage pregnancies, and those are the reported ones. Between 13 and 16 years old, the numbers were 570. Between 17 and 19 years old, the numbers were 2,907. In terms of the years, 2014, 731, 2015, 745, 2016 saw the largest spike. We have to try to figure out what happened in that year. 850. Was it a leap year? Unfortunately. And I'm not saying that in a jocular manner, but sometimes that's one of the reasons, Prophet. But it's a really disturbing spike. 2017, 575, and 2018, 676 teenage pregnancies. Right? The numbers presented at public hospitals and health clinics during the last 5 years. So you would be able to assess by deduction that not all those who became pregnant would have gone to the public health facilities to deliver their babies. So the numbers would be higher than this. And these numbers are already startling, to say the least. Let me start with the TTPS. With respect to the various support services provided in terms of the victim and witness support unit to teenagers who report pregnancy as a result of, in many instances, these are minors. And while there is a Romeo clause in the law which kind of has a different approach to minors impregnating minors, not that we encourage it in any way, some of these are statutory rape cases. And some of those cases would have been reported to police by parents, guardians, and/or teachers and educators. So from the TT police perspective, what is the information that you get when these reports are made to you, and how are these reports treated, and what has the data presented in terms of adults impregnating teenagers and those statutory rape cases?
Again, President, good morning to this august body. The TTPS welcomes the opportunity to share, given our role in protecting and serving with pride in Trinidad and Tobago, and more so, protecting the vulnerable communities. In dealing with teenage pregnancies, and perhaps this very issue of exploitation, which has resulted in teenage pregnancies. Today, we make ourselves available to contribute meaningful to this presentation towards the good of the society. I would ask my colleague in the Child Protection Unit to follow through on this question that is asked, Chairman.
Good morning again, everyone. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is committed to investigating all reports that come to the service's attention. As it relates to the issue of teenage pregnancy, as the chairman correctly indicated, sexual activity between teenagers is decriminalized. The other reports, however, the service has an obligation to investigate, and each report is investigated, including those of activities among teenagers. While with the teenagers, the course of the investigation may differ because we have an obligation to ensure that we verify that they are in fact teenagers. So we ensure that we collect birth certificates and we speak to parents, both of the male and the female, and we get the information from that angle. When it is a case where a teenager is exploited by an adult person, it's a thorough investigation, which includes ensuring that the child is medically examined, and then we go about a fact-finding mission to ensure that all the issues surrounding this pregnancy or sexual activity is adequately ventilated. Where there are instances where the offender or perpetrator is known to the teenager, well, it goes to its natural end, which could lead to prosecution. But there are many instances where teenagers present pregnant and they're unable to identify who impregnated them. We've had instances where persons claim that it was a one-time thing and they did not know the person, never met the person before. In such instances, we are limited as to how far we can take an investigation of that nature, because without the teenager sharing information as to who this person is, that presents a challenge. However, where we are able to follow the evidence, we will. Within recent times, we have started exploring the use of DNA to see if we can tie the perp to the victim. That in itself is a time-consuming process. As it relates to the data being presented, which was submitted previously, this may actually be a snapshot. We acknowledge at the onset that we have some challenges in the collection of data. We also acknowledge that our data may not be currently disaggregated to be able to provide specific information in all the fields. But to the extent that we can, this is what we've presented here for you today. Our victims are, in most instances, we try our best to follow up with them, not only as it relates to the criminal investigation, but also to point them in the direction so that they can get some support service.
We're going to be having a little different approach today. When the other heads of stakeholder groups who are before us, when you questions are posed, I know you're going to have a chance to make your opening statements, and please feel free to do that. But I just want to stay with Ms. Butler for a bit. In terms of the 3,577 cases that have been identified through the public health facilities, how many of those, or what percentage of cases would have come to you, or what number of cases would you have investigated in terms of teenage pregnancies in the last 5 years? And through your investigations and interrogations, how many of those would have occurred at the hands of adult men, if you have that information?
Based on the data that we provided, we have actually investigated 606 cases between 2015 to present. At this time, we're unable to provide data as it relates to the specific age group of offenders. But with your leave, sir, we can seek to provide that at a later date. Right.
Now, you said offenders. Offenders suggest that these are adult men, or it's as the investigation continues? Because if they're offenders, they would have offended in some way. So are these those identified as fathers, the 606, and investigations are continuing, or has it been determined that these are adult men who impregnated teenage girls?
I am unable to provide that specific information at this time, sir. As we mentioned before, this is data concerning teenage pregnancies, and it would include teenagers who were pregnant, who got pregnant, having had relations with another teenager, as well as teenagers who got pregnant, having had relations with other persons. But I cannot give you a breakdown at this time.
Is it that you can't provide it now, or you can provide it later? Is it available?
I am unable to say for certain at this time, sir.
Interesting. And of this 660 spans 2015 now, so that's a 3-year period?
Yes, sir. 2015 to present, 2019.
2019.
Yes, sir.
All right. In terms of the situations that you are, and I'm presuming these are ongoing investigations.
Yes, sir.
Can you give any information as to how many of these cases would have involved alleged incest that would have occurred inside a family setting?
Not at this time, sir. I do not have that information with me.
All right. What services do you provide? And you don't have it with you. Can you provide that to the committee?
We could query our database and see whether we would get that information and forward to you, sir.
I'm asking you a very frank question.
Yes, sir.
Is it that because of police protocol and their ongoing investigations, it's why you can't provide that information? Just be frank. If that's the case, that's fine. We understand that.
Yes, sir. In some cases, that would be the... Yes,
okay,
sir.
thank you. Member Hussain?
Thank you. I just want to direct my questions to the Family Planning Association. I read with interest the Roving Living Room Mobile Youth Center, and I wanted to find out how many communities have been visited by this mobile youth center during the period 2018 and 2019.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Madam. Over the period 2016 to 2018, we would have visited at least 50 communities where we're providing our outreach services, which includes providing sexual and reproductive health care services like pap smears, contraceptives, information and education to the general population. What we would normally do is treat with the young people who are also present on the day that we present at the communities. Madam, we've been having tremendous problems, however, because we have a mobile clinic that we had commissioned since 2001. And you would imagine that after several years, it has seen some wear and tear, and in addition to which, we are presently seeking to bring back that vehicle as well as raise funds for a new mobile clinic. So to a large extent, the work that we do in the community outreach has been affected by our ability to take the mobile clinic into the communities. However, you would notice that we do have the living room, which is the only youth center that provides sexual and reproductive health services to young people 25 years and under. And this is a service that young people can access, but the fact is it's only in Port of Spain. So it makes it extremely difficult for persons, particularly in high-risk communities like Sandy Grande, to be able to come to Port of Spain to access those services. However, we are willing to work with the various health centers or communities where we can take the services to the communities. We have been training a number of community-based health volunteers who on the day that we visit the communities, they are able to come out with us to provide services to to address the different needs of the communities. We recognize that we can do much more, but there is so much we can do with the limited resources that we have.
Based on what you said, there are a number of questions that came to mind. The first one, you said that you had visited 50 communities between 2016 and 2018. Mm-hmm. Can you identify some of those communities you would have visited? And can you also provide the total number of youth that received services from this program during the period that you indicated? And,
yes.
While you're looking for that information, when you go out into these communities, is it advertised in advance that you say that you're coming so that persons are aware, and is it on a day that you would really be able to target who your audience would be as opposed to a weekday when they would be in school?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do advertise through our community-based health volunteers, the ones that we have trained. They go around the communities and share the information about the date of our visit, where we would be, what time we would be there, so that they can come out and access the services. As I said, that we feel that we can do much more, but given the constraints that we have at the moment, both in terms of finance and in terms of human resources, we are unable to do much more. And in terms of the number of, yes, may I ask, please, that my projects coordinator respond to the figures?
Through the chair, thank you for that question. It's a very important one. The way that our outreach sessions are designed, we operate based on municipalities with a high multi-dimension poverty index score as defined by the Human Development Atlas under CSO. From that, we have identified 5 main municipalities, which includes Sangre Grande, Arima, Couva, Tabaki, Talparo, Barco, and one more that's missing. San Fernando. And through these municipalities, we would work within communities within those areas. So what happens is that our community-based healthcare volunteers would do footwork, and we would engage different agencies within each municipality to arrange community events around healthcare. And we tend to maximize around public health observances. So for example, World AIDS Day, where we would take services into communities. Our mandate specifies that at least 20% of our efforts need to target young people 25 years and under. So it follows, for example, if we serve 30 people, 20% of those 30 would be persons 25 years and under. The specifics under the 50 communities, I do not have the exact number at this point in time, but we would be happy to provide that to you at a subsequent date.
Well, first of all, to transition, my question has to do with the Mary Care facility, but to transition, I wanted to ask the Family Planning Association if you have any relationship with the Mary Care facility, and then I will go into asking them about some more questions.
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this moment, we do not have a relationship with the Mary Care facility.
And now if I could have the ladies from the Mary Care facility, I want to thank you for coming. And I want to thank you for your quiet service over the past few decades. You do a lot of work that very few people in Trinidad and Tobago, unless they have been affected by your goodness, know about. What is the maximum number of girls that can be accommodated at present at your facility?
At our Gala Street community, we can accommodate at least 6 girls. We have recently acquired another property that the church has enabled us to have, and that property can now accommodate at least 30 girls with their babies.
I know that even though you are funded by the Roman Catholic Church, you are open to persons from all walks of life in terms of religious persuasions and so on. Has the centers ever had to deny applications because of insufficient resources, or you simply don't have room?
We have only denied when we have not had room. We try our best, and that's why we sought another facility, because when our facility became very filled last year, bearing in mind that while we have a time frame for them to stay after the birth, a number of them are not able to be reinstated in their families. A number of them, they cannot go back because the perpetrators are within close vicinity. And so we have had to hold them, to school them, and to do a number of things with them. We have had to transfer some of them to our other homes, which I would not name at this point. And as a result of that, we now have this facility that can accommodate at least 30. So if even their stay is longer, we are better able to assist them and to reinstate them into society via an education.
I see in your submission you indicated you have 2 full-time staff members. In regards to the qualifications and training of these, both the full-time and temporary caregivers, can you give us an indication what type of training or qualifications they have?
Well, 2 caregivers in each establishment. they may not have certificate qualifications, but when we do interview them, just from experience of their dealing with teenagers, we were confident that they would be able to give that mother atmosphere of love to the girls.
May I add? Yes. Dr. Cynthia Lauchitang is therefore able to assist and make up where we do not have that care. You also have on our management team persons who are very qualified. We also work with Mama Toto. That's a group of mothers who will come in to work with these girls in their preparation. So we draw from other persons who have the skills so that we can give to them a holistic experience while they're with us.
Remember, if I could just interject, first of all, I want to follow Member Amin's congratulations to you and your institution for the work that you've been doing for many years, in most cases, thankless work. I just want to get a sense, without being specific regarding names and locations to protect people's identities, etc., what your experience has been and how long have you been in existence?
From 2010.
2010 to now.
Okay. And this, pardon?
Yes, go ahead.
This began with Archbishop Pantin, whose desire was to help these young girls who would otherwise have no means to care for their children.
At what stage of the pregnancy do you usually have intake, or is it at various stages of pregnancy?
Various stages. Some of them immediately, if it is made known. So there are some of them who come out of institutions. And as soon as it is known within the institutions would then have referrals to us.
And we're trying to really get a sense of what the experience of these teenage girls are. So I'm presuming that you form a bond with these young women, and they're able to divulge information to you, again, without being specific, because we want to get a sense of what this phenomenon is in Trinidad and Tobago. What are they telling you about their impregnation and the perpetrators? Because you just mentioned the perpetrators sometimes in close proximity. And do you have a relationship with the TTPS in terms of safeguarding these young women during and after they stay at your institution? And what are they telling you over the years about what is happening to them?
Dr. Cynthia?
I think it's important that the population get a sense of what's happening to more young women that we prefer to, as a country, admit.
Yes, the girls, when they come in, they do divulge information after a while. When they do come in, of course, it's new to them. They've been removed from a familiar setting. So you may have that little crying period, shy period. But then, as we shower our love on them, they do open up and they would let us know what exactly has happened to them.
Other teenagers, or are you getting reports of adult men impregnating them and manipulating them in those situations?
Mostly teenagers, but we do have the adults.
Reporting protocol for these situations where it's obviously a case of statutory rape in terms of a relationship with the TTPS?
Our protocol is that for admission, they must come in with the police certificate that says they have reported it. I don't think we have received anybody that we had to do the reporting, because that is one of the requirements, that it has to be reported before they come to us.
And have you also gotten case of reported incest?
Yes.
With regards to your protocol and your relationship with the TTPS, have you had instances of persons, residents, security challenges, where perpetrators may try to contact your residents, or they may be in a situation where they require protection from the perpetrator? What are your security arrangements at the facility, or have you had need?
But yes, we have security. We have 24-hour security. It's a locked premises. And our policy of no phones, no cell phones, prevents the teenagers from getting in touch with the perpetrators. We have had instances where we have had to ask for assistance from the police when the perpetrators have really tried to get in touch with our girls.
And there, of course, there would be instances where the girls want to maintain contact, you know, and of course, I'm sure you have counseling services, but have you had instances where you may have to remove one of your clients because they jeopardize the security or safety of the others?
No, we've never had to remove anyone.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. You indicated that you continue the education of the client so that they will have continuation. Do they go to school, to the schools where they come from? Or are they removed from the schools? Do you know what relationship, or do you have a relationship with the schools at all that you can have them transported to and from? What is the relationship, Rennie?
We have had a variety of things, so I will address some of it and Cynthia would. We have had situations where we have had to take girls from Woodbrook to bring them to our school at Tunapuna and to arrange for transportation to get them to school and to bring them from school. We have a relationship with Choices, and so we are able to allow them to go to Choices where they do particular specific skills to equip themselves, not only for the caring of their children, but for their own womanhood. We have some of them who have gone back to the schools that they have come from because they were in Form 5 and about ready for exams, so that arrangements had to be made. And there are others that we have had to make arrangements to shift schools for them. And even now there are some in waiting to go in to school. Dr. Cynthia.
We have had one instance where the Children's Authority, they finance the schooling, private schooling for one of our girls.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Mrs. Rafina Ali Budu Singh to make opening comments, and then I'll invite a member, Antoine, to continue. And I'd like, if you could give us a sense of what your experience has been like at the NPTA regarding teenage pregnancies, and what's your protocols in terms of dealing with that, and your relationships with these agencies and other agencies.
Mr. Chairman, Senator the Honorable Paul Richards and other members of the committee and stakeholders, the NPTA expresses its appreciation for being here today to discuss this serious issue of teenage pregnancy. This has been happening for many years, and I recall at my secondary school, there were girls who got pregnant, dropped out, or returned to school. And it is still happening. So while we make a hurrah about sex education in schools, sexual reproductive health, or sexuality education, our sons and daughters are having sex for many reasons. And this phenomenon leads to other societal and health issues. Teenage pregnancy is counterproductive and bears a strain in the long term on the economic status of Trinidad and Tobago. From our daughter's view, it is, as we say in Trinidad, no big thing for their irresponsible behavior because they can return to school and continue their education. Girls get pregnant due to many factors, socioeconomic factors, parenting style, their absent fathers. For girls yearn the love and attention from the male. So the first instance they get that love and attention sometimes, it leads to pregnancy. There is a document lodged in the Ministry of Education, Central Guidance Unit, that is policy statement on the education of girls faced with school-age pregnancy. And the position statement in that document is that all adolescent girls who face school-age pregnancy are entitled to continue their education in a form that is meaningful and relevant to their specific needs and situations. Support for continuing education for girls facing school-age pregnancy is enshrined also in goal number 3.34, Education for All, DACA goals. All young people must be given the opportunity to gain the knowledge and develop the values and attitudes and skills which will enable them to develop their capacities to work, to participate fully in their society, to take control of their own lives, and to continue learning. So policy statement, education is a fundamental human right. Girls are given the opportunity for ongoing education in order to acquire the knowledge and life skills necessary for gainful employment and full participation in their societies. Allow me to present teenage pregnancy cases for the period 2014 to March 2019, which was given to me by the Ministry of Education. And I have it in education districts. We have Caroni 15, and this is the number I got for 2014 to 2019. Portispan and Environs 59, St. George East 31, Northeastern 25, Victoria 16, Southeastern 17, St. Patrick's 6. And we had 3 girls attending primary school on this listing. Now, this is the statistics I got from Ministry of Education. Okay? So, the expression children making children is heard in all corners as a factor affecting our societal ills today. And we as a responsible nation have to take a serious look at teenage pregnancy. Although all stakeholders can contribute to the solutions, parental involvement is most essential. Thank you. And you asked me to respond to, could you just repeat?
With the agencies here and the Ministry of Education in terms of dealing with this issue.
Okay, so we do have a relationship with family planning. We have done several seminars. We attend the sexual reproductive health program that FPA is doing with the private secondary schools. Ms. Costa, she has attended many sessions with us at the NPTA when we are empowering our parents about sex education / sexuality education, and also empowering parents on their parenting styles and nurturing and molding their sons and daughters to be responsible young people. Time and time again, I know individual PTAs would invite the TTPS to their PTA meetings, and so they will address the problems at the school. With the Ministry of Education, no, we never had any discussions on teenage pregnancy. I know at one time, we did, a few years ago, we did report some instances of teenage pregnancies in secondary school. And I remember at that time, it was alarming to the Ministry of Education. But again, we can't investigate. That is for the Ministry of Education.
It's shocking to hear that you don't have those kinds of interactions. Remember, Antoine?
Yes, because those cases, the information is confidential. Yes.
And thank you, Mrs. Budising, for attending this session. In response to our question, what specific initiatives have the NPTA piloted or supported to counteract pregnancy among students at the primary and secondary level, or aimed at supporting student mothers You responded that principal keep this information away from the PTA. What information were you alluding to?
Okay, at PTA meetings, as I said, this will be confidential, so they wouldn't come to a PTA meeting and divulge that information to the parents. They would do it to the parents involved, you know, in the office. They wouldn't make it public to the parent body.
So you mean in terms of the students who are pregnant? That information not divulged to you? Okay, yeah. Second question, what are the strategies and initiatives the NPTA recommend? And you mentioned that education of parents, spiritual development of their children, parental control on social media. To what extent has the PTA forwarded to the Ministry of Education its recommended strategies to counteract student pregnancy?
We had never had the conversation with the Ministry of Education. In our meetings with them, we never had that conversation. How we could counteract that. But what we do as a responsible organization is to do empowerment of our parents, but we have never even targeted teenage pregnancy as a subject, as a standalone subject.
Is this during your tenure or generally?
Generally.
The National Parent Teachers Association, which involves parents and teachers, have never discussed the issue of teenage pregnancy with the Education Ministry.
Not to my knowledge. I have been in the NPTA at the executive level for the past 27 years.
Is it that it's not an important topic, or you have other topics that are more important? And I'm not being facetious or pejorative. I'm shocked to hear that, to tell you the truth.
Okay, it is an important topic, but I think generally when you do training sessions with parents, especially on how they parent their children and so on, it will be implicit that they would do certain practices with their children in the molding and nurturing of their children. But it has never been a standalone topic in our training sessions, no.
Is it the sex part of it?
No, because we had many meetings with family planning and we support the sexual education, we do. But as I said, even some parents are very open with it. I remember we had a seminar at Enterprise Government Primary, and Mr. Costa was there, and we had a conversation on it. And I know some parents do, some parents do not, because of lack of information, or, you know, it is taboo for them to talk to their children about that. But as I said, as far as I know, we have never done a standalone training with, you know, with the topic teenage pregnancy.
I don't want to go into the specifics because there's an issue involving a pregnant student right now. And I don't know how much that will involve the police and as the case may be. But what support does the NPTA provide to parents and students in terms of a pregnant student? Because there's a lot of dynamics here. You have a male and female student, if that's the case involved, but you have parents of the male and parents of the female. What support does the NPTA provide to parents and students in a situation where this develops?
If that information, I know about individual PTAs, because in visiting PTAs, I would know what individual PTAs would do. At the national level, we have never supported pregnant girls or the parents or the babies, but I know in individual PTAs, once the PTA knows of the fact, they would lend assistance. I know of a PTA where the girl was put out from the home. The parent, you know, had put out the girl from the home, and I know another member of the PTA took the girl in. And she's still now living with that parent of the PTA. So I know in individual PTAs, they'll lend a hand to help and support. But at national level, I cannot recall we doing anything over the years.
So are you saying that the NPTA doesn't have a policy to deal with teenage pregnancy in school with students?
Right now, no, we do not have a policy. Now that it is brought to the fore and we had to come to JSC, you know, we will now consider that. But we never formulated a policy to deal with teenage pregnancy. No.
I just want to go back to the TTPS for a bit. And your submission highlighted for the period 2014 to 2018, there were 1,815 child victims of sexual offenses related to rape, sexual penetration, sex with females 14 to 16, and sex with females under 14. Of the 1,815 child victims, how many were victims perpetrated by parent, guardian, or relative?
Mr. Chairman, we are unable to give you that specific figure at this time.
You're unable to give a lot of figures, though. Can you provide the information that may be sensitive to the committee that we will treat as secret?
Yes, we can, sir.
Of the 606 that you outlined between 2015 and 2018, without being specific to sensitive information, how many would have led to prosecutions or charges being laid?
That figure, too, I will provide for you later, sir.
Of the 1,815 child victims, how many would have led to charges or prosecutions?
We have a figure here of 869. However, we cannot say for certain in all of those 869 cases that they were teenage pregnancies. It is a figure for male offenders who perpetrated sexual offenses. But we cannot say specifically that the 869 were teenage pregnancies.
And could you give me a time frame within which that 869 would have been proffered on alleged perpetrators?
That's for the period 2014 to 2018.
Okay, thank you. Member Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. Coming back to Mrs. Voodoo Singh, you indicated that you had received some figures from the Ministry of Education in your opening statement. How were you able to come by that information? Was it that the Ministry of Education submitted that information to you, or were you able to go in and retrieve that information?
I requested it in writing.
Was it done in preparation for this JSC?
Yes.
If I may ask the family planning, in your submission on the Comprehensive Sexuality Education, CSE, you indicated it is a 12-month pilot project. When was this pilot project done, and what year, what period?
May I ask that I do my opening and before I respond to this?
Not a
Thank
problem.
you.
Please feel free.
Okay, so the FPA is one of the oldest and local NGOs standing strong since 1956. Our passion and our work revolve around sexual and reproductive health and rights. Our role is to bring positive health impact to the diverse segments of our population that often go unchecked or are at a particularly high health risk. Today, we've been asked to address an issue that is at the heart of FPA, that is the status of teenage pregnancy in our country. Teenage pregnancy is indeed a critical public health concern. For example, if you look at the 2017 Global School-Based Student Health Survey, it tells us that 74% of students aged 13 to 15 years had sexual intercourse before age 14 years for the first time among students who ever had sexual intercourse. It is a challenge that is intertwined with many aspects of our society and our ways of life, which require a multifaceted, multi-sectorial, and multi-pronged approach to make a meaningful positive health impact. At this time, Mr. Chair, I seek to partially amend FPA's response to to question number 6A, that is, has the association noted a rising trend in teenage pregnancy? The fact is, Mr. Chair, the FPA maintains that there is an alarming and concerning high prevalence of teenage pregnancies in the country. However, there are many critical gaps and inconsistent reports, available and accessible published data that makes it difficult to confirm the trend. What we can say without a shadow of a doubt is that the prevalence of teenage pregnancy in Trinidad and Tobago is alarmingly high, and this warrants immediate attention and action. With this in mind, the FPA would like to emphasize 3 main recommendations for consideration by this Joint Select Committee. Comprehensive sexuality education, more commonly referred to as CSE, should no longer be an elective. It must be a prioritized school module. We must also recognize that CSE is much more than sex and sexuality. Comprehensive sexuality education is a lifelong process of acquiring information and forming attitudes, beliefs, and values about identity, relationships, and intimacy. It recognizes that information on sexuality alone is not enough, and therefore seeks to equip young people with the knowledge and skills they need to determine and enjoy their sexuality over their life course. Our governing laws and policies must be in tandem with each other and ultimately protect and preserve the health needs of all people, including young people. While we celebrate changes in laws that seek to protect children and young people, this same law should not create a barrier to young people's access to sexual and reproductive health services. Our governing laws and policies need to support young people's access to SRH, which is sexual and reproductive health information and services that would lead them to positive health-seeking behaviors so that they can achieve their full potential. We require both data which is unquestionable, valid, and reliable. You see, Mr. Chair, currently a significant share of our data that is used to drive decision-making around the issue of teenage pregnancy is linked to live births, more so at the public hospitals. But this does not take into account the total number of pregnancies that lead to these live births. What are the associated factors that feed into the root causes of the issues and even the offshooting issues that result from teenage parenting? Mr. Chair, teenage pregnancy is indeed a critical issue on our landscape, and FPA is pleased that with this first step, understanding the issue before us, we are honored and stand ready to work with all the government agencies and all our partners to address this concern. And to go now to the question that was posed by the member, may I ask my colleague, Ava, to respond to that issue?
The Comprehensive Sexuality Education Project was an initiative that was supported in IPPF starting in 2017. Sorry, the International Planned Parenthood Federation, which is our parent body, and it was the CSE project is an initiative supported by that body starting in 2017. We have had a number of challenges that affected the rollout of that project. Many of those challenges included buy-in and support from other agencies to roll out CSE. Because what we found is that the whole conversation around sex, sexuality, and all of the associated factors, including teenage pregnancies, and the fact that our young people are having sex was something nobody wanted to touch. Many agencies didn't want to touch it. And it's also one of the reasons why the CSE project looked at private secondary schools. The pilot project looked at targeting 15 private secondary schools to work with the school to prepare a CSE curriculum that would respond specifically to the needs of that particular school. And we would monitor the rollout of that curriculum in those schools. I could say, because as the project's coordinator, I had direct, first-hand experience working on the project. Through you, Mr. Chair, ma'am, I have been on the telephone with some of these schools and I blatantly heard myself, I don't want to do that at all. Tell them I'm not here. And this is simply an invitation to a stakeholder meeting to discuss comprehensive sexuality education in schools. So we did find interest, and we were able to get on board 5 schools to work with us, private secondary schools. One of those agencies is a very good implementing partner, and it's also one of the agencies that I think is an important consideration for this Joint Select Committee, and that is the National Center for Persons with Disabilities. Because we tend to think that the only young people that have sex would be persons who are whole and soul, and exactly. And there is an alarming an offshoot of concerns with differently abled persons as well with the subject matter. We've also been able to work with other private secondary schools, working with them to implement and create a curriculum in tandem with our own It's All One curriculum, which is an 8-module guide. And what they would do is adapt that guide to suit that school's particular needs. What we've been able to do is work with teachers, as well as parents, and as well as a selection of young people looking at comprehensive sexuality education. As a part of that project, what we've also been able to do is a rapid needs assessment, finding out what's happening on the ground level. And we heard from school administrators, we've heard from parents, and we heard stories from young people. Some of the glaring comments from that rapid assessment was a story of a teacher talking about a student where she noticed that the young lady was rapidly losing weight. And she said to her, my, you're looking a little small these past few days, you know. I would like to get on that diet plan. So the teacher was trying to make a conversation. And the particular student was very close to that teacher. And what eventually came out is that that parent found out that the child was sexually active, and she said to the child, I will kill you. I will poison your food, and I will kill you. So the child stopped eating. So what had to happen at that point in time was that they brought in Children's Authority, and they brought in the guidance counselor in an attempt to mediate the situation. So these are just this is just one story among many that we've also heard. We've heard from teachers who talk about not feeling confident to deal with the subject matter of sex and sexuality. We've heard of students talking about they want to ask questions, but they don't feel empowered, or they don't feel that they're in a space where they can ask questions that they really want to ask.
I just want to come back. You indicated that you had 15 private schools initially, then 5 accepted the invitation to attend. But in your document, you indicated on page 3 that you worked with 3 private secondary schools. So is it that coming down from 15, you actually got 3 to work with?
Yes. So the 5 are still there, but in terms of where they are in the context of the deliverables, the 3 schools are the ones that we would say would be the success.
There's a program, and I'm trying to find out why schools will not be interested. And I'm going to go on a very touchy subject. And does your program at all speak of abortion?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And I would like our executive director to expand a little bit more on that.
Madam, the program is a holistic program which addresses all the issues that young people are confronted with. I want to come back to the living room where we provide services to young people. And what we are seeing in a number of instances is that when young people come to us, they are already sexually active. They do not want, sometimes, they do not want their parents to know. Sometimes they are referred to us by medical practitioners, because when they go to the doctor, they would ask them for guidance and for counseling and for contraceptive methods, and they will refer them to us. Some of these young people have already had abortions. They know exactly where they can go to obtain an abortion. They know which street, which pharmacy, and therefore we feel that it's important in whatever education that we provide that we able to inform and provide the correct information to young people about all the situations which they may find themselves in. And hence, the reason why across the curriculum we are dealing with issues that young people tell us they need information on, that young people are exposed to and are perhaps getting the wrong information, or not perhaps, that are getting wrong information for their peers. When we grew up in villages. Our children are growing up in the world, so they have access to information, but they need to understand how to manage that information carefully. So therefore, we have to address the issues when they come up, and we have to ensure that we provide them with correct information.
Is pro-choice, is life choice an alternative on your program?
Let us put it this way, that Family Planning Association treats with both abstinence for those young people who do not wish to become sexually active. We do have a program where we also train them or provide them with the skills in terms of how they could keep with their program. But we also, based on the data, based on the statistics, where we are seeing that by the time, since 1985, or 87, sorry, we conducted some research on young people, and it was themed myths, misperceptions, mistakes. And it was a piece of research that was done. And even at that time, it showed us that by the time young people reached 16 years of age, 60% of them were already sexually active. So it is important for young people who want to abstain from sex. We also provide that information. For those people who are already sexually active, we have to provide them with the information so that they can understand how to manage their sexuality.
Intervene. And thank you for that fulsome contribution, Mrs. Da Costa. And this question is also for the Family Planning Association, the Mary Care Home, and also, thirdly, the National Parent Teachers Association. We obviously in this country stuck between whether or not to have a particular type of sexuality and sex family life education in Trinidad and Tobago. Because of your long history, this is to start with the Family Planning Association since 1956, and you would have been able to glean decades of data, look at the trends. We seem caught in a bind between the faith-based organization and religious groups, denominational schools, and the government schools, and an approach that has not worked in terms of a one-size-fits-all for different groups. Would you agree with that? And that has been part of the challenge in Trinidad and Tobago?
Mr. Chair, I would agree with you that there's not a one-size-fits-all. I think it is important, and we have been advocating for all the partners, the collaborators, to come together so that we can develop a holistic program to treat with this issue of teenage pregnancy.
And can this holistic program entail the understanding that different groups will want different approaches because of their socialization and their belief systems, and the approach to deal with the common issue must take those and respect those considerations, as opposed to a one national approach that obviously has not been working. So there may be an approach developed in collaboration with family planning and other agencies, the NPTA, to deal with denominational schools and their belief systems, the government schools and their belief systems, and the private schools and their belief systems. But we still have to come together to want the same outcome. Would you think that would be a productive engagement? And why shouldn't the Family Planning Association be the central agency to champion that because of your decades-long tenure and the data with which you can advise policy?
Mr. Chair, I certainly think that there's a lot of room for engagement with all the partners. Family Planning Association has for a number of years been leading the charge with other partners in this regard. I want to draw reference, for instance, that we were once part of the curriculum of the training of teachers in teachers training colleges. From the very earlies, in the early 70s, 80s, we were always invited to share information with the teachers that they can use when they go into the school system. That no longer exists, and it depends on who is in authority will determine to what extent we would be engaged. But I certainly think that we as a mature society should be able to bring all the key players together to determine how we're going to address this issue. There are children who do not want to become sexually active. What would we do? But recognizing that at some point, the head is going to tell that body something, because we are sexual beings, and we are sexual beings from the time we are born until we die. And therefore, it is important that we are able to address the different stages. We're talking about age-appropriate information for our young people. And therefore, I think the time has come for us to stop burying our heads in the sand, for us to take an objective view of what the needs of our young people, because we have engaged them. We have engaged them in numerous consultations, and they have indicated what they want. The living room was as a result of those consultations, where they wanted to have access to information, they wanted to have access to education, and they wanted to have access to services without being under the glare of the adults who were judging them. So I really feel that if anything comes out of this consultation is the need for us to set up a multi-sectoral committee for us to follow up on the recommendations that are coming out of this committee meeting. Because I think whether we're seeing about them, and I do respect all the work that the various stakeholders are doing. The AmeriCare home, I think their efforts are laudable, but how do we link what they are doing with the kind of information that the young people would need in order to at least delay the second pregnancy?
I think that's what part of the mandate of this committee is.
Yeah.
I want to go to the TTPS in terms of your community outreach department and how that has been able to be used in terms of, one, gaining information about what's happening in communities because of the building of those relationships with the committees, and what is the protocol, because and you can correct me if I'm wrong, protocol regarding minors who are reported either by anonymous means, friends or family, who come to the attention of the police and are pregnant. Have you had cause to remove minors from home situations because of these kinds of situations? And secondly, the first part was building on, what has the community police been able to tell you in terms of following up on some of those investigations where information comes to the police, like any other information regarding drugs or guns, regarding minors who may be in abusive situations, and particularly those who would have become pregnant in those situations, because it's also a cultural norm that we're trying to break in Trinidad and Tobago, where there's and particularly, well, let me not say that, generally, in many areas, there's some parents who have not made the transition in their thinking from what would have occurred 50 years ago, 40 years ago, even 10 years ago.
Thank you, Chairman. The Community Policing Unit through the TTPS has over 100 police youth clubs throughout the 9 divisions in Trinidad and Tobago. And the police youth club initiative is a crime prevention strategy that focuses on positive engagement of youths for persons between the ages of 5 to 29 years, equipping them with the knowledge and skills to make meaningful decisions that will aid them in becoming productive citizens in Trinidad and Tobago, and also making Trinidad and Tobago a safer place. Within these police youth clubs, there are 7 core areas of youth development that are focused on education, culture, sports, skill building, personal development, environment, and social community activities. Under education, the Police Youth Club focuses in its meetings with its members in terms of focusing on, with the assistance of our partners, stakeholders, some that are present here.
I hesitantly interrupt you. We are fully aware of the policy and what it's intended to do. What we're really trying to get at in this committee is what the experience in terms of the feedback has been from the community as opposed to the overall vision for the community policing unit. And I say that not to insult your delivery in any way, but what we really want to get is what your officers on the ground have been telling you regarding these situations, please.
Okay, I would just want in getting to that, the issues of the Police Youth Club, where these issues are addressed, we have had situation, of course, like any other, where sex education has been treated as a taboo situation. However, different leaders are able to provide that, to do that intervention in terms of ensuring that their members are knowledgeable about sex education, and to share that knowledge and inviting other stakeholder partnership in order to deal with it in cases where the police officer himself or herself are not able to treat with. We have had other interventions coming from, not only from through police youth clubs, but from the witness and witness supports section, in which I will invite my colleague to share on.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the Victim and Witness Support Unit, as may be aware, we continue to offer support to all persons impacted by crime, and this is a population of particular concern, being teens impacted by sexual exploitation, with that resulting issue being teenage pregnancy. What we're trying to do in our experience, we have explored various initiatives in terms of sensitization, and we fully endorse our colleague from the National Family Planning Association in terms of the need for that whole sexuality training and education amongst the youth. What we have engaged with as of last year, we would have held an initiative out of Maloney Police Station, which would have benefited an average of about 25 teen females in particular impacted by sexual abuse or some form of crime, and really looking at the young persons, how we could empower them with more adaptive skills to cope with these issues. And that is going to be repeated this year because we see the ongoing need to sensitize teen females so as to prevent issues of teenage pregnancy, but more so help them cope with the effects of that whole sexual abuse that they may have experienced. And that is targeted for next month.
Has information come to the TTPS Victim and Support Unit about gangs being involved in victimizing young women in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly minors?
I would have to say no at this point in time to the Victim and Witness Support Unit in particular. There has been information of other sorts of activities that may be affecting young persons in terms of information maybe leading to incest, or information maybe suspected some sort of abuses affecting young girls. But the data to that, of course, my colleague will speak to that in a later submission in terms of the actual reports.
Member Antoine has some questions.
Mrs. Budu Singh, in your response, you indicated that the Ministry of Education gave you stats, but I didn't hear you mention Tobago, right? So that does not include Tobago. To the Family Planning Association and to Mary Care. do you have a counterpart, or do you have a branch in Tobago that dealing with unwed mothers, as the case may be, from America?
Chair, the truth is the Archdiocese of Port of Spain covers both Trinidad and Tobago. And so we have had children, teenagers from Tobago who have come here to us. In fact, we have crossed the boundaries of Trinidad and Tobago. We have had residents from other Caribbean islands that we have also taken care of at our facilities.
This is done in Trinidad, there is no branch in Tobago.
There is not a branch in there, but we have our people. The way the Archdiocese is organized, we have a Family Life Commission. The Family Life Commission has branches in Tobago, both Scarborough and Delaford, which would be their main centers, as well as in Trinidad. And so we work together. Whatever is happening, we meet. For this last weekend, we had training for persons who deal with young people. We had people from Tobago, people from Trinidad who have been involved, who have participated in the training of working with these people.
Chair.
Yeah, well, and to the police, your statistics, is it?
Member Antoine, I think Mrs. Da Costa
Oh,
wants
yeah,
to just
Mr.
add
please,
something
yeah.
to that. Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just like to say that the Family Planning Association of Trinidad and Tobago does have a facility in Tobago. Unfortunately, due to the limited financial resources, we are unable to open that facility every day of the week. So we have to treat with that as if it's an outreach program, and therefore we visit Tobago. However, last year, the Family Planning Association signed a memorandum of understanding with the Tobago House of Assembly, more specifically the Division of Wellness, Family and Health. And we are going to be launching the living room in Tobago at the end of June, and it is going to be integrated as part of the adolescent health program in Tobago. So we have another opportunity to reach out to the young people in the community to be able to expand the services through the living room in Tobago.
Police, your statistics, does that include Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, sir. The figure that we gave for teenage pregnancy for 2015 to present includes 35 from Tobago.
Another question. I hope I'm not opening a Pandora box here, but we have a phenomena that's supposed to, well, I don't let me say phenomena, a situation that's supposed to take place from Friday, where we are going to be dealing with Venezuelans coming to Trinidad and Tobago. Have you put anything in place to deal with teenage pregnancy among Venezuelans who would now be residing in Trinidad and Tobago over the next year, as the case may be?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the Family Planning Association, since October last year, we have been partnering with the UNHCR to provide services to sexual and reproductive health services to the Venezuelan population. That includes young people as well.
Member Ami wanted to interject.
Yes, I want to ask the Mary Care Center, have you had clients who are differently abled, who are teenage and pregnant?
Let me just say this, that when you think of differently abled, you have a whole spectrum. We have had a number of them who have had to have psychoeds, and psychoeds have identified particular disabilities that are not necessarily external, but are present. And so we have had to treat with young people, with children, who have had different kinds of abilities, who were differently abled in that sense. Okay? We have also had the engagement of a psychologist who has been involved in that process. I want to come back to the question that was asked previously, may I? In terms of the Venezuelans, presently in our facility and in our care, there are those that we have who are teenagers who are pregnant, and those who have one who has just delivered her baby. So to answer your question, yes, we are open to life. That's what Mary Care is all about. It's about being open to life, and wherever it is that there are persons who are in need of the support to live and to have their children loved and brought into this world in a caring environment, we are there.
Would those Venezuelan situations be forced situations?
Pardon?
In terms of adult males impregnating those Venezuelan teenagers?
The Children's Authority would be the ones who referred them and brought them to us, and they would have the specifics.
Member Antoine, you had a follow-up?
Yes, to the police service. Have you put things in place for dealing with pregnancy, etc., with Venezuelans in terms of interpreters, as the case will be? Are you prepared for the situation that will come upon us shortly?
Yes, we are, and we have already begun to deal with persons from Spanish-speaking countries who are victims of sexual offenses in the Child Protection Unit, so yes.
La policía de Trinidad y Tobago habla español?
Forgive me, Chairman, I just want to continue on the situation of differently abled persons who are teenagers who are pregnant, and to ask the TTPS, do you have statistics with regards to persons who are physically or mentally differently abled who have presented with with teenage pregnancy? And can you give us a little breakdown in terms of whether it is consensual between teenagers, victims, whether the prevalence of sexual abuse amongst differently able that lead to pregnancy?
May I please ask that the TTPS be allowed to give this information in private? Thank you.
Member Anton, you had a follow-up question? Yes. Try to bring to a close, but if there are closing comments, and I just wanted to ask one more question of the TTPS in terms of reiterating the information that we'd like to get from you, of the 660 outline between 2015 and 2018, if we can get a breakdown of, if you have that information, if you have been able to disaggregate that information of those that would have been perpetrated by adult males, and we treat this information as confidential and private for obvious reasons. Of the 1,815 regarding sexual penetration, sex with females 14 and 16, etc., and how many prosecutions have taken place or how many investigations are ongoing, and all that we have asked for to be submitted and we treat it as private. Member Hussein, you have a question? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just one final question I have from Mrs. Da Costa Martinez regarding the amendment to the legislation in relation to child marriage. You indicated that with the age of sexual consent and age of marrying being raised to age 18, young people under the age of 18 will not be able to access healthcare services without a parent or guardian present, according to your submission on page 8. How has this impacted the number of youth seeking services at your organization? And is it currently the policy of the FPA that minors must receive parental consent in order to receive services?
Thank you, Madam. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a very, very important question, and I was really hoping we would get to this because we with the age, when the age of consent was raised from 16 to 18 years, what happened is that we found that a large cohort of young people between 16 and 18 who needed to have access to sexual and reproductive health services was now cut off because of the legislation which indicated that when they visited to access such services, that they will need to be reported. Of course, that has placed fear in the hearts of young people, but it doesn't help their situation, because particularly those who know and who want to be responsible, and they are having sex with their same age, close in age, and they would need to have access to services. So what has happened is that they have been pushed out of the stream of being able to access those services without fear. I think, though, that it is important for us to put some kind of policy measure in place that will seek to address those particular instances where they legitimately want to have access to services, they do not want to become pregnant, they do not want to be exposed to sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. And therefore, as healthcare providers, we have a responsibility to find ways and means whereby we can provide them with the necessary services. I'm suggesting here that we can perhaps look at the Gillick competency model, which really gives the healthcare providers the opportunity, after they have assessed the individual, to determine the ability and the maturity of the young person before them to be able to provide them with the services. In some cases, they come with their parents. In some cases, they do not come with their parents. But when you take their history, you realize that you cannot turn them away, and therefore you have to deal with this situation on a case-by-case basis, because you're really doing more harm to the situation. So I think we have, and that's when we talk about the fact that the laws, the policies must be in tandem. They must relate to each other, and therefore we must not deny or seek to exclude those young persons who want to have access to services, to deny them that access. And I think really and truly, this is a call for us again to look again at the legislation and how we could adjust that legislation to include the ability for us to give services to those young people who legitimately would like to have services and who are engaging with sex, not necessarily with older adults, but they are same age. And I would like, with your permission, Mr. Chair, I am a little disturbed about the focus of the meeting as it relates to perpetrators, and that not all teenage pregnancies have occurred within a context of male, sexual abuse or male,
well, I appreciate your comment, but I think we made that quite clear that we understand. We want to disaggregate. That's why we kept asking the TTPS for a disaggregation of those that would have occurred as a result of crimes being committed by adult males impregnating teenage girls, but the TTPS wasn't able to give us that. So we're operating in a kind of vacuum, because without that information, we don't know if we have a significant perpetrator problem as opposed to teenagers involving in sexual activity between themselves. So I take your point, but we are quite clear on that approach.
I thank you for the clarification, sir.
All right, we're going to ask, first of all, thank you all for being with us. We're going to ask for you to give us your closing comments, starting with Mrs. De Rosia.
The privilege is mine, and I want to say ours. Sorry. The privilege is mine, and I want to say ours, as the Archdiocese of Port of Spain, who undertook from 2010 to be on the side of life and to offer support to pregnant teenagers, mothers, teenage mothers and their children, to give to them a safe environment, a secure environment to live, that education is of absolute importance. If our children from their earliest years would have in their homes people speak to them in a healthy manner about sex, about sexuality, about relationships, we can, I am sure, cut down in vast numbers the number of teenage pregnancies that we have. When you walk through our streets, which I do very often, and in these times I'm working particularly in the area of C-lots, and you talk to the many teenage girls who are carrying babies, it's obvious that some of the things that we have stated are the reasons why they are carrying those children. But when you expose them to the truth about themselves, the truth about their bodies, the truth about why God created them and what is necessary for us to have children and to nurture these children, they have lots of aha moments. We have had abstinence clubs in our schools, and I'm talking particularly about the Roman Catholic schools. Many of them have not continued, but as we speak, I think that is one of the things I'm going to advocate for again. Because if we can truly expose our young people, and I'm still in the field of education, I still work each day with over 140 young teenagers, and in my years of working specifically with them, I do not think that in our school, as far as I can recall, and I've been there from day one, that we have had one of our girls who became pregnant. We have had opportunities to talk to boys and girls about their relationships, but the way we treat with relationships and the openness with which we talk about relationships allows them to relate in a healthy manner. That does not say that children won't cheat, that they won't do things that normal boys and girls do. But they are able not to see this as something that they have to hide, that we can talk, we can share with each other, we can talk about the things that are important, at the same time have deep respect for our own bodies and the bodies of others. As a Roman Catholic Church involved in all of this, our Family Life Commission has a tremendous education program and outreach, and as we seek to relate to one another, we will be able to share what we do so that there can be a better blending or a deeper understanding of what is happening and how we can work together to eliminate, I don't think it would ever be eliminated in truth, but to affect in a very positive way what is happening among our girls. Cynthia.
Well, I think that our center, we really try our best to give a home atmosphere, one of loving, because we have found in speaking to the girls that this seems to be what is lacking in their background, why they find themselves in this situation. And when we help them to understand that they are loved, that they were created by God and they are loved, we do see a change in them.
Thank you. Just to add, I agree with everything you both have said. I think we also need to understand that children have many different socializing agencies in their lives. And if we presume that all children are raised in the same way or have the same backgrounds, we have the families, the absence of some parental influences the school, the community, the religious bodies in some cases, and mass media that are all socializing our children. And while we may think that all children feel that their bodies are respected in a particular way, some are socialized to believe that their bodies are respected by giving it away. And we have to be aware of that. I did an interview a couple of years ago in 2 areas where I saw very young girls pregnant. One was 15 and one was 16. And the response, I'm saying, why are they pregnant? And the elders were just about 35 in that area, in those areas, said, well, they start late. So it's a cycle that people are indoctrinated in, and that is their life. And in their minds, your life is not for them, because that is their reality. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong, but I think we need to be very cognizant of the fact that people from different backgrounds have different benchmarks for their lives because of their socialization. And we have to understand all the agents that are coming together to create this storm that with the results we're seeing. So if we don't ourselves pool our resources and come together, we will not be able to make the kind of progress that we made. And we have to be very aware of sitting on one side and presuming that they want this from your side, because not all of them do. Some of them want to be pregnant at 14, sadly, because that has been their socialization. Mrs. Da Costa Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Commission for placing this as a very important agenda item, because I think it has this has national impact on Trinidad and Tobago. I want to end or close by reiterating 3 of the main areas which we feel strongly that if we work together, we would be able to nip the situation in the bud. Knowledge is power, and therefore we really call on the Ministry of Education to institute the commission, the commission that will review the health and family life education to see whether it is still relevant in the context and in terms of the issues that young people are now experiencing, so that we could integrate more some of the issues around sex education into the curriculum that will address some of their problems. So therefore, I think Family Planning Association really looks forward to this multi-sectoral approach to addressing the issues. The other one is in relation to the laws and policies, and taking another look at some of the legislation, another look at some of the policies to see whether or not they are facilitating and addressing the needs, the real needs of young people. And I would really like to call on the Ministry of Health in this instance to look at how we fast track the policy as it relates to sexual and reproductive health services, access to services to young people, how we could fast track that in order to deal with some of the issues that confront young people, and that they do not feel intimidated to access services. And the third area is that I want us to look again at how we can deal with this data issue. It is a problem across the board in the country, not only in terms of collection of data for teenage pregnancy, but every time we need to have the data that is necessary to develop the appropriate programs to address the issues in our country, we end up in a situation like this. We have heard all kinds of statistics being bandied about in terms of how much is the rate of teenage pregnancy, how many teenage pregnancies in schools. If we count up the number of requests that we get from schools from the time somebody becomes pregnant, it certainly will throw some more light on the statistics that were presented to Ms. Budusing here today. I thank you very much on behalf of the Family Planning Association for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Ali Budusing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In closing, I would say that the most important thing we can do to bring change with teenage pregnancy, it begins in our early childhood centers, and that is educate, educate, educate. We have instances from the primary schools, with the use of language, for, sexy language that children are exposed to. And I can tell you, I know of a primary school child at present who does not want to return to school because of the name calling by other children, and this child not exposed to that. Only wants to know what that mean, what the other mean, and he's afraid of going to school now. So we need to work, as you said, one common place all children go to is school. So the school can make a difference. Even in the statistics I give with pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, from the Ministry of Education, it wasn't only in the government schools, it was in the denominational schools also. And in some areas, the denominational school had more cases of pregnancies recorded than the government schools. So it's not a matter that if one child is affected and not the other, it's across the board. And as I say, we have to educate our children and also embrace the parents in schools so that everybody can work together to one end. And I agree with Mr. Costa where, all stakeholders have to sit down and plan and implement. And it is time that the Health and Family Life Education program is taught in the schools. And one problem we have is that, I know it's a matter of trust. Parents on the whole do not trust teachers to deliver for some reason or the other. But I think with adequate training, teachers can do it. And I didn't hear anything talk about the homosexuality in our country, because we do have it among parents, we have it among teachers, and that will open a whole can of worms if we go to discuss that. So, as I said, we have to be real. It's not that the NPTA doesn't care about teenage pregnancy. I can tell you my first vice president this morning, who was supposed to be here, is not here because he's at that school where we have this issue of the pregnant student, and he's there this morning, finding out what we can do to help. So he's on the ground this morning. So again, we are committed to work with all our stakeholders in whatever we can do for the benefit of our young people and the country as a whole, starting from early childhood, because that is where the habits are formed.
Thank you.
And the attitudes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hazel, Superintendent Hazel, sorry.
Thank you very much, members of Mr. Chair and members. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. I want to, on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, expressly thank you for having us this morning. And I want to say with all assurances that some of the information in which we weren't able to provide for you this morning, I give you all assurances that those information will be supplied to the Commission so that at the appropriate time. I want to also say thanks to the members of the Stakeholder Committee with whom we have been working tremendously in order to deal with this issue of teenage pregnancy as an organization that seeks to promote the good and welfare of all within Trinidad and Tobago. We continue to work together, and we look forward to that collaboration and that support in dealing with this very, what I would say, vulnerable situation. Once again, we thank you, and at this point in time, I just want to crave your indulgence in asking for a member from the Witness and Protection to give closing.
Thank you very much. I just want to submit that the Victim and Witness Support of the TTPS we remain committed to offering support to teen victims that would have been impacted by this issue of teenage pregnancy or other levels of vulnerability. And we continue to recommend the ongoing educational initiatives in terms of communities sensitizing both rural and urban communities as to how they can deal with this issue in a specific way based on their reality. We also hope to recommend that the comprehensive support be delivered to teen victims of sexual abuse so as to minimize their chances of coping with the abuse that may result in pregnancy with following sexual behaviors, with ongoing sexual unhealthy behaviors. So that's why we recommend that comprehensive support be delivered in a timely manner by multiple agencies, as well as providing support to parents that have children that have become pregnant, so as to help parents know how to cope with these things. Because we found that a number of children have resulted to self-harming or depression issues resulting from teenage pregnancy. So these are some of the areas that the Victim and Witness Support Unit through the TTPS would continue in its efforts to sensitize and to partner with the stakeholders at this committee and others towards reducing this issue amongst our teen girls. Thank you.
Thank you, and to follow you, we didn't touch on it, but it would be remiss of us not to mention the welfare of the newborns born in this situation, which we didn't particularly cover, but they are also impacted significantly, in many cases negatively, by these situations. We would ask that Mrs. Bodu Singh submit some of the data that you supplied. What the committee will do is act as a facilitator to gather as much of the data as possible, and I know we can engage the services of the research department at University of the West Indies, who will also come before us eventually to try to have a cross-sectional study of all the data coming out, because what we realize is that there's so many different data sources that are so disparate. So confirmation and rationalization of the data is important so that we can all work from the same data to make informed policy decisions, because one source, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Family Planning, TTPS, and it's all dealing with the same small jurisdiction, which doesn't help in terms of reliability and validity in the data. So if we can get as much data as possible, which is why we're asking for the data, and we understand that some of the data is sensitive, we can elicit the services of the tertiary level institutions to do cross-sectional studies of the data, of the studies themselves, to come up with some sort of meta document that we can all work from. And we certainly also act as a facilitator from one of the ministries to champion bringing the stakeholder groups together, because we met with the first meeting, we're meeting with you all, and we have one more meeting planned with other stakeholders, including academia, so that we can bring all under the same umbrella to achieve the same objective, hopefully, and deal with this once and for all. Because for my own personal part, I hate to hear about the policies now, because we've had policies for 50-odd years, and the situation is not getting better. So which means we have to take a different approach at this point. And I think we all kind of educated and bright enough to come up with a solution. All right, so we thank you all again for coming before us and being so honest and candid in your deliveries. And I also want to thank you on behalf of the committee, the members who are here and who are not here. And we are looking forward to getting the data and the information from you, so we can start the process of data collection and analysis. We will now suspend this meeting. Thank you so much.